right, so now what I've done, I've taken the patterns that we made for the seat and I've laid them to where you can read the writing so that I know the pattern is on the right side, correct side. If the pattern was upside down, then I'd actually have two. That one right there and this one would be the same. You don't need two the same, so make sure your patterns are in the right position. Roughly lay them out on your material. And now we need to add sew allowance. And sew allowance is the part of the seat that you will not see. It'll be 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever you like to use as a sew allowance. Now, usually I do 1/2 inch, but if I'm, or 1/4 inch, but if I'm doing a French seam where you're gonna fold the seams back around and sew, after you sew the seams together, you fold them down and you put a backing on the seam. I'll show you that. I usually use a 1/2 inch. And then after I get everything sewed up, you can go back and trim your sew allowance off because that'll be tucked up underneath. If you don't trim it off, then you're going to get a bulky spot in some of the areas. So from here, we're going to add our sew allowance and then we're going to make our witness marks on the sew allowance, the marks that you see here. And then we'll, from there, we will glue it to some sew foam. All right, so it's at this point where I spend quite a bit of time trying to make sure that my patterns are the same on both sides. And this is the right and left, and they're both turned over to where they're the same pattern, basically. There was quite a bit of difference between the two from doing it on the foam and seeing them lay up on top of each other. So what I've gone and done is tried to make both pieces exactly the same, and at the same time I go over and make sure the foam matches each pattern as I go. The foam is going to tuck in and compress to whatever seat cover you're sewing. But if you try to do these different, then it's going to be very noticeable when they're on the seat. I mean, you don't want a 1/4 inch wide on the right side, and you also, I've gone with a straight edge and cut the line straight because you're going to sew straight and the pattern is following some of that foam. And this is your chance to get your pattern straight, get your edges straight, and get all of your, Sharpie marks, witness marks and stuff straight. Some patterns, like this one here, you can see it's got a curve in it. Those may not need to be straight. They may follow the contour of the back of the seat or the bottom of the seat. So I'm not saying do it to every pattern, but just double check each pattern and the spot that it goes now, because when you go from here and you make your sew allowance, you're going to be sewing on this straight line right here. There is no changing it once you get behind the sew machine. Take your time, do it right, and save yourself some money by doing it at home. And make sure you clean your wife's sewing machine up and throw away all the beer cans when you're finished. All right, so I've got my pattern. I've got the top side up, just like I've got it marked. And then I've got my hem gauge. And a lot of guys, you could use a washer that's got a 1/2 inch on it. There's all kinds of ways to do it. This is a pretty simple way. Seeing how I cleaned up my lines, take the hem gauge, I set it on a 1/2 inch. You put your pin right here in the little hole and just guide it. When you press down, it'll guide and you can make your mark all the way around. So you'll have a 1/2 inch all the way around the pattern. Now down here, you can see I wrote add for the listing. This actually this is the edge of the foam, but this is the part that'll fold under the seat, and I'll put a hem here, nylon weed eater string or something like that in here, and or a piece of metal or a welding rod, and you'll fold this around the bottom of the seat and you'll hog ring it to the springs to keep the seat tight. So that's how I mark my patterns out. Now I'll cut this out at this point. Then I'll glue this on the sew foam. When it's on the sew foam, I'll put this pattern on the back of the sew foam, and it'll be upside down, meaning the top will actually be facing just like it is now, but it'll be on the bottom of the sew foam. So the writing will be backwards. I'll transfer all of my marks to the sew foam because that's what I'll be looking at when I'm sewing it all together. Hope I didn't lose anybody. Stay tuned. Oh, by the way, I've had people ask me before, this is called a space pin, made by Fisher. If you look them up, you could probably get them on Amazon, eBay. This is a hydrogen-filled pen that will write upside down, anywhere you want to put it. You don't have to shake it to get it to work or anything like that. It is gas-filled. It is made for the astronauts at the space station so that they can write in the zero gravity. So the marks come right off, and it's really neat. So space pen. There you go. All right, so the next step after I get all my patterns cut out of the clear vinyl, it's time to lay them out on the sew foam. The sew foam is basically a thin foam. Some folks call it scrim. If you were going to order it, you'd ask for scrim. What it is, it's a just a thin foam that has a kind of a membrane on the back of it, like pantyhose. And what it does, it helps keep the thread from pulling through. It's also where you get your design from on the front. Say if you're going to sew diamonds or pleats or something like that, you would choose your foam based on how, how you want the diamonds to be. If you want them to be thick or thin, you can get this. Most folks use 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. I have seen it thinner, and I think they actually make it a little thicker than 1/2 inch, but I've never used any of that. Most of the stuff I ever use is the 1/4 inch like this. But anyway, I lay my patterns back out on the sew foam, and at this point, I will glue these down to the sew foam. I mean, not so much glue that it's sloppy and messy, but it's just a tack just to keep it in place, because these will be sewed together when you're actually doing the sewing. So you're not really using the glue to make a permanent bond. But so anyway, let me get these laid out and we'll start gluing some stuff up. All right, fixing to glue it up. I've got all my patterns laid out. I've rolled them back to where I'm only gluing half of them at a time. So I'm gluing half of the pattern and half of the foam. I roll it over and repeat the process. I've always get asked, what do I use? I use sprayable glue. I use a Harbor Freight paint gun that you could throw away. I think I pay $15, $18 for this gun on a coupon. Works perfect for this. I added a little bit of glue to this can, but it has been, the nozzle has been sealed with a trigger, and it's got a gasket. The glue was perfectly fine left in this can, and it's probably been 2 months since I've sprayed anything out of it. The glue that I'm using is Weldwood contact adhesive. It's made for Landau tops. I use it on everything. Everybody in the industry uses this glue. There is some new stuff out there, but man, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I hate to put in a headliner on something and use a new product and get that phone call again. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it when it comes to glue. Anyway, let me get this sprayed up. You spray it, you let it tack up, almost completely dry. It's contact. As soon as you put the two pieces together, it's there. Remember, you're not trying to put this stuff on like you're gluing it to a door panel or anything like that. It's gonna get sewed through. You just want it to stay together while you're sewing it. So, put it on time lapse and we'll catch some of this in action. All right, as you saw in the time lapse, I got all the patterns glued up, and I've still got to cut the patterns out of the sew foam or scrim, but it's really hard to do when the glue's a little tacky, so I'll let that dry. Now we've got the plaid portion of the seats. I've got the patterns laid down on the sew foam just to make sure I've got enough. Running a little short on material. I called it close on it, on everything. Let's see how far we can get with this, and hopefully I don't have to go buy more material. Let's get that plaid over there. Woo, look at that plaid. Well, guys, I had to get a professional opinion, and this is the clear here is the bottom, and then this is the back of the seat. That's going to get the plaid. This is another reason that I like to do it in clear. So if you do have a pattern, you can see the pattern. What I had to do was ask my wife, should I run the seats this way or that way? And she helped out and said that the heavier lines are going up and down, and that should be the way that the seat goes. And I believe she's right. I know she's right. Woo! If you're watching, I know you're right. So this is going to be how that's laid out. All right, I was trying to show you guys a little stapler. Got it on Amazon. That's the staples that I'm using, and it's really been working out great. Okay, so you saw that I put the witness marks on the back of the sew foam, and I've made a 1/2 inch sew allowance or seam allowance, whatever you want to call it, mark. And then at the same time, I've laid a piece of tape 1/2 inch from the thread, the needle, to right here. That's 1/2 inch. So as long as I keep my material when it's going through here, under the needle, on this line, right here, then I don't have to worry about going back and doing my sew allowance lines. And it'll keep it uniform and the leading edge of our pattern or our panel that we're sewing together. You can also see that I got a new technique that I stole from one of my buddies, and it is a staple, where in the past I've used clips like this where I keep my panels together, and I've also used straight pins where you'll pin the panels together like that. These right here jam up, break a needle. These right here, they slip and slide just a little bit. But I put a staple now, and I've only done it this very first time. I bought a staple off Amazon, and I'll show it to you, part number and everything here shortly. Put it right on the edge. It comes out very easy. Your sewing line, your seam, is way back here. So this all gets trimmed anyway. This particular seam is going to be a French seam, so we'll end up trimming off the foam and then peeling it back and sewing a French seam in here. And I'll show you that later. Anyway, that's where I'm at. And let's go ahead and start sewing our first panel. It's taken me a while to get the machine threaded, make some bobbins with the color that I'm using to sew everything together with, set the tension up. I'm sure you guys are on a budget and you don't want to spend 20 grand on an upholstery job, and I get it. I'm right there with you. That's why I have self-taught myself over the years the technique of doing my own upholstery work. And I still just do my own. I mean, you know, cars that I build for other people, I do that, but I'm not an upholstery shop. I don't have one coming in every day right after another. So, but you can get you a machine off Amazon, a new one. You can get you a machine off eBay, a used one. You can even Craigslist, Facebook, you know, guys, just go searching for a used industrial sewing machine. It really helps if it's got a reverse in it. There's a lot of entry-level machines out there for, you know, anywhere from a couple $100 to $1,000 for a good used one. The better machine you buy, the better off you're going to be. If you buy a super cheap one, more than likely somebody's got issues with it and skips a stitch or it's out of time. You got to be careful. If you buy one from a company, they're going to warranty it, even if it's a used one. So do some research before you jump off in there. Send me a message. I'll send you some detailed information about what I've got and where I got it from. You might want to follow those same avenues those guys ship. Anyway, let's get this thing turned around and start sewing. Well, guys, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for joining me in the shop and helping out. In the next episode, we're going to start sewing the Bronco seat. And I'll tell you right now, it turned out great. There's just too much information that I was going to have to skip over to make this video short enough that you guys would stick around. So the next video, we're going to start sewing, we're going to finish the seat, and get it ready to put in. So as always, give me a thumbs up if you like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't. And if you're through watching, it's not too late. Get out in the garage and go build something. Till next time, we'll see you.